Good evening. This is my presentation, Toxic Leadership, Oklahoma Wesleyan University. Professor is Mark Shannon. The topic I'll be discussing tonight is toxic leadership. Let's start with the definition. Toxic leadership is perhaps the most difficult leader to work with, not because they're near impossible to please, but because they stifle the growth of individuals. What does that mean? A lot of toxic leaders don't want employees to get better. You don't see a lot of toxic leaders putting people in for school awards, writing smart evaluations, or even taking care of employees for that matter. Toxic leaders have many different things that go on with them. I'm going to tell you about them. Toxic leaders are authoritative, they're coercive, and they're self-centered in their own pursuits. They own a single-mindedness, and they often fail to acknowledge that there are other measures of doing a task well. Hence, they don't delegate. And if they do, they expect one certain course of action. They want things done their way, and that's the only way. No matter what kind of changes you can come up with to make the organization better, more efficient, more effective, it doesn't matter to the toxic leaders. I'm going to tell you some emotional traits of toxic leaders. Toxic leaders, they have a flawed emotional understanding of their surroundings and the people that are in them. They are seen as tyrants, they're hostile, they're destructive, they're narcissistic, nepotistic, or authoritative. And they lack the communication and the social awareness that makes them effective. The attributes of toxic leaders. They're weak. They're closed and secretive. They lack direction for the followers. There's organizational distrust from the very top to the very bottom. They lack the ability to delegate effectively. They like to bully people that work for them. And they have tyrant traits. They create a culture of fear and isolation. There's a total lack of transparency. And they're destructive. And they're micromanaging and over-controlling. The worst thing I've seen in the military or working in the federal system is this last one. They have an inconsistent organizational process. It's the do-as-I-say culture. And that's the only way that it's ever been done. No matter how much you try to change it, the next thing they will tell you is that's the way it's always been. And then the personal part of it is they're intrusive on their employees' lives. Not because they care, but because they're always looking for an angle. How do they affect organizations? They focus on a competitive edge, which sometimes is good to a point. The toxic leadership workplace interlinks between intent and impact. There's always a great intent. This is the intention. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to get there. This is what we're going to do. They always fail to impact others. They have an impact. It's negative. But to positively influence others, it never happens. And they can be equated to, like I said before, pathological psychopaths. Their mood swings are horrendous. They go from very, very high, and they can do nothing wrong when they're rewarded for the work of the people that work for them. And they like that. They like the limelight. They like the spotlight. But when it comes the other way, and there needs to be things that need to be fixed or things that could be done better, it's always everybody else's fault. I've taught them. I've shown them. It's not true. The culture of toxic leaders. This is how they work. They run in a couple of different ways. There's the wolf. They run in packs. There's always an alpha that makes the command and all others have to follow it. Doesn't sound bad. But when you start thinking about it, if your toxic leader is the chief executive of your organization and he's a toxic leader, you best believe every first line supervisor is also a toxic leader because he can control them. That's what an alpha male does in a pack. He controls the pack. And this creates a culture of territorial defense and aggression. So when you bring up points that, let's say you're a newer member of the team inside of your organization and you see your first line supervisor says, so what do you think about the place? And you tell him some fixes that could be made. He is definitely defensive. And if you bring it up more than probably one time, he will start to go from passive to aggressive in a bat of an eye. And what does this do? It creates a culture of fear for anybody to speak up and give you a real perspective of what's going on in your organization. Real simple. You will never get better if you don't know what you're doing wrong. The next one is the praying mantis. They create a culture of safety. They want to make everybody feel stable and the well-being of the organization is just fine. They have a false sense of presumptions that followers are being taken care of because they're so detached from what's going on that they just think as long as I'm not giving them negative counseling and I'm not having to write them up, that everything is great, that everybody is happy, and they don't understand why there is dissension among employees that are trying to look for leadership and look for ways to change the organization compared to the old guard that just likes it the way it is because they don't care. It's just a paycheck. They create a culture of manipulation. Yeah, they'll manipulate your schedule. They'll manipulate you. They'll manipulate others and turn them against you so that they can be seen as the safety net. The octopus. This is a great one. They seem to handle many things at one time but never really accomplish anything. They have the ability to change shapes and to change the culture. They are perceived as masters of all trades. And the reasons that you need to care is because they're unpredictable and distrustful. They will tell you everything is great, the organization's doing fine, you're doing fine, and there's nothing to worry about. Don't worry about it. We'll weather the storm. Think about how many octopuses were in the financial crisis were telling people that everything's going to be fine. It wasn't. Lots and lots of people lost their jobs. Lots and lots of people were without work. But the octopus kept them there as long as they could because they manipulated them into believing that everything was fine. The queen bee. This one works for the greater good of the organization. Straight, pure, simple. The organization. They function on charisma. Everybody likes them. They can't handle it when somebody doesn't like them. They create a culture of high expectations. No matter what, we're gonna get there. It's gonna get there. It's gonna happen. We're gonna make sure. I'm gonna take care of it. And they apply as much pressure and as much stress to the followers as they can. Well, why would they do that? It depends on what kind of organization you're in. If you're in telemarketing or you're in sales, those are the people that make sales happen because they create that culture and then they just get rid of the ones that don't meet it. The next one is snail. They often create warmth and security in the organization. The problem that is associated with that is there is low risk, low reward, if there's any risk, limited innovations, and no creativity. Sounds like a very, very bad place to be employed to me. Why would you want to work there? To me, a snail is one of those people that always tells you that things are getting done and we'll get to it, and when it comes that time, and that time for the snail never ever happens. It doesn't matter what it is. If it's you've got a discrepancy on your paycheck, there's a discrepancy in the process, there's a discrepancy in the organizational values or goals that you're supposed to meet, we'll meet them next time. We're working at it. We're getting there. But you never end up getting over the hump. Solutions for toxic leadership. Every organization has a system of checks and balances and regulations which not only ensures that the subordinates function effectively, but also manage the use of power by the leader. What does that mean? There's dysfunctional and toxic leadership and high-performing and elite. There should be 360 counseling. Let's be honest about it. My supervisor has never asked me what he's doing wrong. In fact, when he counsels me, he asks me what I should be doing better. I look at that as one of the worst forms of toxic leadership, because if you can't sit down with an employee and tell them what they're doing right, how can you sit down and tell them what they need to work on if you never spend enough time with that employee to understand what they do to begin with? Just some questions I'm posing. I know that we're going to be graded on this presentation, and there's going to be some questions and answers. Mine is rather short and to the point, but I think that the question that will come from this will be great, and I will be able to inform you better of what I'm thinking and how I'm thinking and what's being done. Another solution for toxic leadership is they need to be counseled from the top. A lot of times when you have ineffective leadership and counseling and stuff like that happening, it starts at the very, very top of the organization. It's a systematic problem that I've seen throughout my career in the military and in the civilian sector. Fixes that can be done for that. Let me get back on track. Solutions. Solutions are the culture continuum has to be swung. We all know what that is. You've got what I've told you already is the toxic leader, and then you've got the leadership that you've worked for that you know is great leadership. Those are people that genuinely care about other people, that want to see them perform better, that want to see them have a balance of work life versus stress life. And when I say work life, stress life, all of us have enough stress at work. We have home life stress. In between there, we're trying to bridge the gap. I work in a very high stressful job. I surround myself with very high stressful things to do. I enjoy the processes at my employment that allow me to facilitate what I do and what our organization does. And I take a lot of pride in knowing that I've worked for some great leadership over my time in the military, and I learned what it takes to be a great leader. Genuinely care about your people. Never have them do something that you haven't done or that you wouldn't do yourself, and to be accountable for your actions, both in your personal and your professional life. If I have the expectations that you can do the things that I'm asking you to do, it's because I know that I have taught you well. It's not because I tell you how to do things. I believe that leadership needs to show you how to do these things. In your chain of command or in your job, there should be somebody who's mentoring you, trying to make you better. And if you don't have that person, you need to be reaching out to your leadership to make sure that you do have that person. I myself do not. There's one boss on my whole island. There's one manager on my whole island, and we just hired a manager for the first time in 15 years. That job was finally put back on the books. My first line supervisor has never done my job, doesn't know what it takes to do my job, treats everybody in a toxic way, and has created a environment that is straight up of toxic leadership. That's why I took on this project, and that's on this presentation, and that's why I did my final paper over it. It's very true and dear to my heart. You can look up thousands upon thousands of articles of toxic leadership and what it is, and there's very few ways that you can fix toxic leadership from your and my perspective. So what I have decided to do as a soon-to-be graduate of Oklahoma Wesleyan University after taking the bachelor's and now the master's program is, I may not be paid to be a leader. It doesn't matter. Leadership of other people comes from within. The true desire to see others do better. I have been able to do this more and more throughout my career. While I was in the military, each one of my soldiers that stayed in the Army on active duty is now a first sergeant. At least. Some of them are sergeant majors. I put 5 people through flight school. They're all CW 2s and 3s now. And one kid went from an E4 to OCS and is now a light colonel 18 years later. Surprising when I got to see him across my desk 6 months ago. I didn't do that. I facilitated a way for them to be able to become the person that they wanted to be. That's the only part of the process I played in it. How did I do that? I did that exactly from being a toxic leader. I looked at what makes me want to make others successful. I like to facilitate. That's leadership. Toxic leadership does not facilitate anything. I want to see people get better. Toxic leadership is fearful of people that are educated and people that care. Because the more that you care as a leader, the more spotlight is shown upon that toxic leader who doesn't care about anybody or anything except the check. The funny thing is, toxic leaders, they're usually the first people that when a very important person, or as we call it, VIP, show up to your office, is the first one telling them how great your organization is and how proud of you as an employee they are. That's probably the first and only time you'll hear it. They will accept awards for other people's word and never say a thing to that person or that group of people. Toxic leaders is what's killing organizations. It's what's killing the United States military. It's what's killing the education system. I say that, and bear with me for a minute as I sum this up. Great leaders and leaders of organizations or education or the military or the private sector can only fight the fight so long. They can only take on so many toxic leaders before they decide that I am going somewhere else where I feel valued, where I feel I can make a difference, where I can make a change and help and facilitate other people to become better. Why is that? It's because they're tired of being beat down for doing the right thing for their employees. Toxic leaders. Easy way to cut it down. The financial meltdown and the crisis. People had $75 million parachutes. They just about tanked the economy. Thousands upon thousands of people lost their homes. Thousands upon thousands of people lost their jobs. Did any one person that had the golden parachute give back their money? Did they help anybody in their organization? Did they care enough that they were making $70 million on the way out the door? Did they go pay for the people that supported them and worked for them for all those years? Did they pay for any of them's mortgage? Did they make sure any of them weren't culpable and take the blame themselves? That's what toxic leadership is at its highest peak. Toxic leadership is the inability to care, the inability to take care of others, and the inability to have a conscience to do the right thing when you're faced with that fact in that time. That's the one thing I like to live by with my motto, and people that work for me know this. It's easy to do the right thing all the time. It's easy. If you're doing the right thing morally, legally, and ethically all the time, you're beyond reproach. Do we make mistakes? Of course we do. Toxic leaders, do they ever learn from them? Nope. They just keep making them again and again. So what do we do? I myself have taken a pledge that when I see toxic leaders, I try to make them better. If they don't like what I have to say, I disengage. And then in 24 hours from then, I re-engage them upon the same thing. I believe in holding people accountable. I believe in holding people's feet to the fire. I believe in holding others that are in charge of people to make them do the right thing. Sounds simple. Let me tell you, on a personal side, it has cost me greatly. Promotions, money, titles. But once again, if you're a leader, which I feel that I am, I don't care. Making others do the right thing by people and treating them ethically, morally, and legally fair is more important to me at the end of the day. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. It's if you have any questions or comments, I would love to hear them. I would like to take a few seconds, and this is the first time I've ever been on the camera. I've had the sincere pleasure of going to Oklahoma Wesleyan for almost 4 years now. I value every person that I've come in contact with that is in this program, that was in my bachelor's program. I'm still in touch with many of my professors. I would like to say thank you for watching this video and taking the time out of your day. And if you have any questions or comments, like I said, I greatly appreciate any feedback. And if I can be of any help to anybody and any of you guys in the future, please do not hesitate to send me an email, call me. I'm on Hawaiian Standard Time, so you're going to catch me usually. I work third shift 2300, which is 11 p.m. to 07:30 in the morning. And if you need my phone number, feel free to email me, text me, call me. If I can learn anything that I've learned in this whole program, if I've learned one biggest thing is everybody can learn something from somebody. I love reading everybody's comments and posts, and I sincerely thank you for your time. Thank you and good night.